Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. Mr. Jim Eichenhofer, Pelicans.com. In front of me, I'm Gus Kattengell. Coming up next segment, John DeShazier, radio analyst of your New Orleans Pelicans, literally just back. Well, he got back around 9 o'clock-ish last night, Jim. We'll talk to him about what it was like to be on that road trip. And he's going to say something very interesting. I think people will go, huh? Pels had more losses than wins, but he actually felt good about that road trip, and he'll explain that coming up here as well. Plus, the spoiler scale. That is coming as, what? We got 9 games left? Is that what it is?
10
games left. Yeah.
Yep.
6 at home.
4 on the road.
4 on the road. And they're all important for different reasons. For the Pels, we've been talking about that. But for some of these road teams, or some of the opponents that the Pelicans are playing, it is very important as it's time for standings, watching, and all of that. So we'll get into all of that and more, plus player of the week and player to, kind of keep an eye on and things of that nature. We'll do that. But first and foremost, last night, Pels wrapping up the 3-game road trip at the Pistons back on Friday, Jim. They took on the T-Wolves. That didn't go so well. A second 40-point defeat in the week. Sunday, much better performance. Just overall take on the 2 games over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, Friday was – it seems like they've been in this mode lately where they've alternated between, really impressive – the Wednesday game was an impressive win. The Friday game was pretty discouraging, just the fact that you were, run off the court in the second half. And then Sunday you come back and, it wasn't a win, but they lost by 6. And, I think it was a tie game or they were down by a possession with just a couple minutes left, so they had a chance to win. So overall, it's just been one of those things where it would be nice to get out of this pattern where it's like every other game you're either, disappointed or you're really pleased with the way that they played. But like you said, I think the road trip overall was pretty good. I mean, they were, given the way that they played against the Pistons in the Smoothie King Center, you kind of might have gone into Sunday's game thinking, oh boy, this is not going to be a lot of fun. But it did turn out to be, I think, one of the more entertaining games, especially on the road, of the entire season, even though they didn't end up getting the win ultimately.
C.J. McCollum, 40 points. How many times he's done that this season? 3?
I think
3 or 4?
I think it's been 4 or 5.
Okay, well, that's my point, though. That's pretty good. How many times he's dropped 40 points this season? He had a solid performance yesterday. I thought Jordan Hawkins had a nice effort there as well. But, man, CJ, it's interesting because one of the things we'll talk about with JD, too, is ball handling, turnovers, and things of that nature. Why do you think CJ McCollum's been able, in a season where he started slow, to have so many games where he gets hot and gets on that?
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess maybe the most clear reason to me is just the opportunity that he's had. I mean, if you think about his first 3 seasons here, there weren't that many times where you looked at the starting lineup and you said, man, he's the only guy out there that is going to have the ball a lot and get a bunch of shots. So I think that's the opportunity is definitely there when you don't have Zion playing. And I think, by the way, he has 4 games this season now of 40-plus points. And I think I'd have to go back and look at the specifics, but I do think in some of those, there were multiple guys that were out, so his shot attempts are going to go way up. And I'm not taking away from his big games because, I mean, you're not going to score 50 points in a game if you don't get a good amount of shot attempts. But he can get, when he is in a high usage mode where it's like the ball is coming to him constantly and he's not out there with Zion, Trey Murphy, and the various other scorers that the Pelicans have, he can get on this roll where it's like, man, he's getting hot and the other team is not able to slow him down. So, I mean, that's I think that's probably the biggest reason why this season in particular he's had so many big games because, I mean, there's been a lot more games where you looked out there and you're like, he's going to have to score a bunch of points for them to win. Whereas, when this team is full strength, he's going to pick his spots. He's going to have his nights where he scores 25, 30 points and is a huge reason why they win, but they're not just so heavily reliant on him to have big nights the way they have been this season.
All right, tonight it's the Philadelphia 76ers. Got a game tonight, got a game on Friday. So bookends of the work week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, no games, a brief I guess, breather, Jim, after having 3 games in 4 days, and then we're back at it every other day to wrap up the season. We said only 10 games remaining. What are you looking at tonight? I mean, the Phillies also been a team that's been injured. They've shut down some of their players, like guys like Paul George and stuff. We'll wait to see if Zion's going to play tonight as he's recovering from a back contusion. Hard fall in that first game against Minnesota where he played great. So if I'm going out to the game, I'm a Pels fan. What am I looking at tonight?
Yeah, I mean, you probably should have your roster handy nearby. You need to make sure if you want to get familiar with some of these Sixers players because, I mean, if you think about it, when the Pelicans played the Sixers in January, that was one of the Pelicans' road wins. You looked out at the court in Philly and said, man, a lot of these Sixers players, I don't know who they are. I'm not that familiar with. They're even less recognizable now if you look at the players that are in the rotation. So, I mean, that's definitely going to be a big part of this as well. So, as we record this around 11 a.m., the Pelicans injury report will be coming out around 12:30, 12:45. The deadline is 1 p.m. for both of these teams to report their injuries on the second game of a back-to-back. So, I mean, unfortunately, as we record this, we don't know exactly the status of some of the players, including Zion Williamson. But I think it's going to be one of those games that is, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but it's going to be kind of one of those kind of summer league games where it's like, okay, you're going to see a bunch of players that you haven't seen play very much, and a lot of them are out there to prove whatever it is that they're trying to show in the NBA, getting a bigger opportunity than you expected. I mean, both of these teams were playoff teams. The Sixers have made the playoffs 7 years in a row, which is a streak that's about to end. So, I mean, this is the kind of game Monday night where you never would have expected this in a million years, that a March game between the Sixers and the Pelicans would be a bunch of unproven guys or guys that are just trying to get a foothold in the NBA. But, I mean, I think that's a big part of what we're going to see tonight.
Yeah, we'll see what takes place. In the meantime, we'll also see what takes place the final 10 games. John DeShazier is just on this road trip. The radio analyst for your New Orleans Pelicans joins us now. All right, time now to bring in our guest for today, and it is analyst on the Pelicans radio network, Mr. John DeShazier. John, good to see you, although you were just in Detroit, man. It's crazy.
Hey, yeah, that's why God made the charter, I guess. Yeah, we got back decent time last night, maybe 9:15 or so not too bad. Could have been a whole lot worse. We have gotten back a whole lot worse. So, yeah, not too bad at all.
I know some people don't like the afternoon games, but, I mean, the fact that this was a back-to-back, I feel like that makes that's a big help, the fact that you guys got back here at a reasonable hour as opposed to coming back from Michigan at whatever time a night game would have been. So
well, I got to say, unless the team plays on Saturday night, I always believe Sunday games should be like a 2 o'clock tip.
I'm with you.
Tip. If I were commissioner for a day, that's exactly what I would do to the schedule. I'd be like, hey, are they playing Saturday night? No. They're playing a home game? Yeah. Schedule it for 2 o'clock. Because what are we waiting for?
I love it.
I got to tell you, I would love to have an entire podcast of if I were commissioner for a day with John DeShazier.
I got some stuff.
You got some ideas. We kind of did that a little bit on the podcast on Friday, come up with ideas on a radio roundtable with Aaron on how to maybe, fix teams from, I don't know, being as competitive as they could be, right? Sitting players and things of that nature and all that stuff, which, JD, we can always get into with you as well. But the most important thing I got to know is you did it not only once, but twice in a row. How annoying is the howler in Minnesota?
You know what?
I kind of like it.
It kind of turns into white noise, to be honest with you, in the background. I mean, you're really not paying attention to it because, one, the Pelicans didn't get to the foul line a whole lot, so we didn't have to hear it a whole lot, unfortunately. But, yeah, it just kind of turns into white noise in the background now. I think it's a lot more annoying if you're at the foul line a lot and you're winning. And so, when you're losing by like 40, hey, you get there and it's like, hey, keep the clock running. It's like, hey, ref, you don't have to call any fouls. We can get out of here. It'll be okay.
Well, between that and chicken, I mean, it was an
now I gotta say this. Yves Missi has had a wonderful rookie season. I think we'll be on the all-rookie team, the all-time franchise leader in single-season rebounds as a rookie, past Anthony Davis. Some fantastic things. He gave those folks chicken back-to-back games in the fourth quarter. He missed 2 free throws in a row in both games, and so he got the bricking for chicken. The folks in Minnesota love Yves Missi because he fed a whole lot of folks.
Yeah.
So now my only thing with that is, if I were commissioner for a day, I would tell everybody to go to the same Chick-fil-A on the same day. Wouldn't that be
See
great?
what happens.
Wouldn't that be great? I just want to, because I mean,
camera.
hey, no shade Chick-fil-A. I know, but I know you ain't got that much chicken in there. So I would love for that to happen. I just like to see what would happen if that happened.
There it is. So much we can get into here as well. Again, I think maybe it's kind of a fun thing to maybe do one day. Just all the different events, or I think things that teams put on, Jim. I know you traveled a while here as well. I mean, I don't know if the sound of Frolicking Pelicans, which used to be a sounder on my talk show, and I can't find it anymore. But someone went out, I guess, to a beach and recorded Pelicans frolicking, and it kind of sounds like. Rah, rah, rah. I mean, it's not a. I don't know if that's something you want at the free throw line.
Yeah, I don't know if that would have the same effect as the howling wolf, but nonetheless.
Yeah,
I mean, JD. I mean, one of the reasons we wanted to have you on, obviously, you were there for the whole road trip. How do you, when you evaluate the road trip overall? I mean, how do you look back on it? Obviously, they had a really good win at Minnesota. But I mean, what are your biggest takeaways, I guess, from that trip?
It was a 1-2 record, obviously, so that's not winning. But I felt like it was a winning road trip. I guess I've been beat up so much this season, so my standards have lowered some. So they won the first game in Minnesota. Both teams pretty much full strength. Zion at the height of his powers. And so we saw what the Pelicans can do when they're like that. Now, the second game in Minnesota was, kind of a, hey, we kind of like, we got what we wanted. Zion's hurt. We're going to sit him. Minnesota's out for blood because they absolutely desperately need the game. And there's no way Minnesota's going to play that same way in back-to-back games. So that one was kind of a one-off. And then you go to Detroit. And so Zion's not playing. Yves Misi's not playing. So you're already shorthanded. And now, of course, this team is even more shorthanded. And you're playing a Detroit team that, even though it doesn't have Cade Cunningham and Tim Hardaway Jr., it's still a pretty formidable lineup when you add Malik Beasley and Dennis Schroeder to the starters. But the Pels had them dudes. I mean, played them well and played them down to the last 3-4 minutes to where it kind of got a little loose at the end and got away from them. But really played well, all things considered. You knew there were going to be some discrepancies. You knew there was going to be a point in the paint discrepancy because the Pels didn't have Yves Misi. And then Karlo Makovic, unfortunately, plays 16 minutes and fouls out. So you don't have anything in terms of rim protection, and it showed. You knew there was probably going to be a discrepancy at the foul line because the Pelicans didn't have anybody to draw those fouls if Zion Williamson didn't play it. And you're relying on three-point shots. But that was encouraging also because the Pels made threes. I think they were 20 of 40 from three, which is extremely encouraging because, we were on the radio broadcast saying, you know what, in order to win this game, Pels probably need to shoot it 50 times from three. And if they had shot it 50 times from three, and if they made 23, 24 of them, they probably do win the game. Maybe they do win the game.
Yeah.
But it was kind of, you got to make do with what you have in that situation. Now, the unfortunate thing, the thing that's under my skin the most is the turnovers. I understand these guys don't have the chemistry and they hadn't played together and all those things that are built in as excuses, legitimate excuses. But a lot of these are unforced turnovers, and unforced turnovers don't deserve legitimate excuses to me. When if you dribble off a foot and or you're in a dribble handoff and a guy's able to shoot the gap. To me, those the unforced errors really have gotten on me because you lose games that way when you just turn the ball over. So you have had 26 turnovers that second game in Minnesota. I would say 18 of them were unforced. Yesterday against Detroit, I would say 12, 13 of those turnovers are unforced. And those are the ones that you look back at a game and you say, man, that's 12 more shot attempts you didn't get. Or you get live ball turnovers. That's 8 points they got in fast break off turnovers that were live ball. And those things are glaring in the NBA. You might be able to get away with them sometimes, but they are glaring in the NBA. And very rarely are you able to just shoot your way out of those kinds of mistakes. They were able to do it the first night in Minnesota. Now, the turnovers evened up in the second half, and that made a big difference. But it's rare that you're able to shoot your way out of certain certain aspects of the game. If you can't score in the paint, you got to be able to score from the outside. If you're turning the ball over, you got to be able to score when you do have the ball. But if you turn it over so many times, and if you give up so many free throws, where do you make up the gap? That's where that's hurt this team the most these last few games. And that's the thing you want to see tighten up because, like I said, I understand these guys, all of them hadn't played together. I mean, maybe Antonio Reeves and these guys, sometimes they're probably walking around with a, my name is sign on them. But having said that, these are National Basketball Association players. And I know practice is limited, but there's a reason you're in the NBA. And unforced turnovers don't help you when a guy's able to pressure you at midcourt and kind of take it from you. I know that's not an unforced turnover, and yet it kind of is because it's just basic ball protection. And those things are just some things that are glaring that I want to see this team be able to clean up.
I think part of that reason, guys, is what Zion's not doing that, right? But would you say, at least to me, one of the bigger, I don't know if you can answer that question, but one of the things here in the final 10 games where you want to see who's your ball handler and things of that nature, because I know Zion can handle that. Gotcha. I don't know when DeJounte Murray's coming back next year. It probably won't be at the start of the season, right?
Yeah, I would imagine
okay.
All-Star break after All-Star break.
So that's a lot of basketball before that. And I guess the need for that is kind of important, right? I mean, that's something you address later on, but I guess it's...
No, you got to have a point. You got to have a point. Okay. You got to have somebody who can get guys in space. You got to have guys who can handle the basketball under pressure. You got to have guys... And, Jose Alvarado can do some of those things, can do a lot of those things. And Jose Alvarado has actually played well.
He can't play 48 minutes.
But he can't play 48 minutes. And the flip side is Jose Alvarado's 5'10". So defensively, if you're switching everything, and everybody in the NBA seems to be switching everything. When you're switching everything and Jose Alvarado ends up on the post against Tobias Harris, who's 6'8", or he ends up on the post against, Paolo Banchero or, Franz Wagner, those guys aren't guys who are going to kick it out and say, okay, we're going to run our offense reset. They're going to say, okay, this is now our offense. We got a guy in the house on the post that we can take advantage of. So they'll just, whatever it is they were running, they'll break it and say, okay, this is it now. This is what we're doing. And in fact, you'll see guys kind of hunting in those situations. So, yeah, Jose can do a lot of things, a lot of great things. He can't grow 5 inches. And so, you got to have a point who's a little bit bigger. And when Jose's off the bench and he gives you those juice minutes, those 18 to 20, juice minutes, he is fantastic. But you got to have a guy who's going to be a frontline starter in the NBA who can handle the ball and handle the pressure. And so that's got to be kind of one of the things that the Pelicans are looking for with DeJounte Murray going to be out a period of time for next season.
Wanted to quickly comment on a couple things that you said earlier. One, the Friday game in Minnesota reminded me of what we see a lot in the playoffs where the higher-seeded home team loses game one, and it's like they're going to come back with a vengeance. We hardly ever see anyone go down 0-2 in a playoff series if they're the home team for those first two games. And I think that's part of it. There's just a big mental aspect to it as well. And the part you said about Carlo, to me, Carlo game against Detroit was like a clinic on how to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. It just seemed like he would come back in the game and then he'd be, sometimes not really his fault, just like, just be in the wrong spot and pick up a foul and immediately be back having to go on the bench because of that. So that was a bad development when they were already so, like you said, so shorthanded at center. But I wanted to ask you about, one of the real bright spots of Sunday, we talked a little bit about this on the post-game radio show, but I asked you about Jordan Hawkins as far as his 25-point game, which was tied for his season high. And you talked about his aggression. That was the thing that you liked the most about the way he played on Sunday. What have you seen from him lately, and where do you think that comes from? Is his confidence coming back after the back injury and some of the struggles that he had earlier in the season? What do you think is behind that, maybe?
I think that's exactly it. I think he's feeling healthy, and I think his confidence is where it should be. The guy's name is Hawk. Shouldn't he be in attack mode all the time?
Right. Definitely.
And so you like to see him in attack mode. not so much worry. And I get it. He's in the second year in the NBA, and a lot of things are predicated on how you earn your minutes. And most guys think, if I score, I stay on the floor. And a lot of times, yeah, that might factor into it, but it's the other little things. You got to defend, you got to rebound, got to rotate on defense. Now, those things are things that coaches look for because you got to affect the game when you're not scoring. Mm-hmm. And not everybody can do that. Not everybody is tasked to do that. But when you come off the bench, you got to be able to do that because you don't know how many minutes you're going to get. Now sometimes it might be 28, sometimes it might be 18. So you got to be at it as soon as you get out there if you're Jordan Hawkins. If you're not in the starting lineup, you got to have foot on the accelerator the minute you check into the game, and you got to be aggressive. He's too good a shooter, and I think he's got a lot of other skills that he's working on and developing because now we're seeing him, do a little bit more off the bounce and those kinds of things. We see that part of his game developing. He's not just reliant on the three-point shot, but even then, he can generate and create his own threes. So that's one of the things that you want to see from him continue because I just think he's got a lot of potential that can be unlocked. He, I guess, possibly, and I don't know how, I know he got a little point guard work in Summer League last year, but he could be a guy that you could kind of hopefully lean into for some spot minutes at the point because he's got the size. If he can handle the ball under pressure, he's a shooter that you want out there. He's got the length that you'd want in a defender. So he's got a lot of aspects that you would want. And look, if he's looking in the mirror, he's got to be saying, you know what? If I can play point, if I can handle the ball a little bit better, I can get on the floor a little bit more. And so those are, guys are saying, I want minutes. Well, what are you doing to get those minutes? That's the way you can get more minutes if you're Jordan Hawkins, is to play a little bit more point, which, again, I think he tried to do some of that in Summer League, and maybe he works on some of that extensively in the offseason because, a guy who's a shooter like Jordan Hawkins doesn't need to be putting all his time into shooting. He's got that part. It's the other parts of his game that he's got to strengthen, and I think that's one of the things he can strengthen.
It's interesting, too, because, he had, I don't know what it was, at least 5 games as a rookie where you say, man, this guy's potential is so high. And not only his potential, but the fact that he's actually, he beat Dallas, not by himself, but he was a huge reason that they won that game. Super shorthanded last season as a rookie in Dallas. He had a couple other games where he had, 30 plus. And then it seemed like yesterday's game was just another example that I would put in that same group where you say, there's a reason this guy was a lottery pick and that he was picked so high. I think a couple other guys I think that we're going to be keeping a close eye on over the last 10 games of the season in terms of, Hawk is a second-year guy, but the Pelicans also have multiple rookies. With the bigs and the situation that they have right now with Carlo Makovic and Yves Missi, over the last 3 weeks of the season, what are some of the things that you want to see from those guys as they close out their first season in the NBA?
I'll start with Yves, the starter. I want to see Yves be more aggressive offensively. He's catching the ball, sometimes at the free throw line, sometimes at the key. He's got his back turned to the basket. His defender is 4 or 5 feet off him in the paint, and Yves is not forcing himself to be defended. And so you can't play. It's hard to play 4-on-5 offensively in the NBA. Mm-hmm. You can get away with it sometimes, but it's hard to do it. And so I want to see Yves be more of an offensive threat. He already has the want to in him because he's chasing every rebound. He's chasing every block. But he's got to refine his offensive game. And probably a lot of that is that he feels uncomfortable with it right now. But this is the time to work on it. Now you got some game opportunities to work on it because, you're not a playoff team. So this is the experimentation process where you can work on some things like that. And so hopefully, you'll see him develop a little bit more. Not even maybe trying to drive to the basket, because when he does want to be aggressive offensively, you see him trying to drive to the basket. But I'd like to see him just turn around and develop that little jumper. It's right there. They're giving it to you. If you make 1 or 2 of them, you don't have to make a whole lot of them. But now people got to come up and guard you, and now you can get around them a little bit easier. For Carlo, Carlo is turning into my new Najee. He's my dude now. I just want to see him be more wise, I guess, or just learn the NBA defensively. as you mentioned yesterday, he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But he's kind of off balance. He's reaching. So I want to see him learn how to be a little bit wiser when it comes to fouling, and I want to see him have a little bit better judgment, because he had 8 points and 11 rebounds in 16 minutes yesterday. He was valuable, but he committed a couple of fouls. And it's like, dude, I know you don't want the coaching staff to yell at you. I get it. I know. But you got to understand what your value is right now. Your value is on the floor. Mm-hmm. You commit that foul, and now you got to go sit. Now, the team's smaller. You don't have anybody that they will look at and say, he might block a shot. So I think he's just got to be a little bit more judicious in that. And then some of that might just come with playing in the NBA and NBA officials getting a little bit more familiar with you, hopefully, and saying, well, okay, that's kind of how he plays, or we're going to let that slide, or whatever it is, because, as guys get a little bit older, seems like they're able to get away with a little bit more. He won't be able to get away with as much as Rudy Gobert, but still, you just want to see him, grow and mentally be ready, especially because it looks like he's ready offensively. It looks like he's got a lot of things he can do offensively to add in. But now he's got to be able to play that kind of defense that can keep him on the floor. In a situation like yesterday, you want to see him on the floor 30, 32 minutes in a starting role, and instead he's out there for 16. And so now you extrapolate and you say, man, if he'd have been on the floor, he might have been able to get 16 and 14 or something like that. But you don't know because he wasn't out there.
Right. The last time we had you on the podcast, one of the questions we asked in the roundtable was about your excitement level for the NCAA tournament. And I know you were quite busy this weekend, so I can't imagine you got to watch a ton. But by the way, there was a game where a team scored 13 points in the first half.
I saw that. I watched them. See, but now here's the thing. To me, and folks, if you like the NCAA tournament, okay, don't at me and don't whatever, because I'm just going to say this. It's like watching a car wreck. You're just kind of glued to it. It's a lot of bad basketball. My goodness, it's a lot of bad basketball.
Yep.
And so I'm watching and I'm like, this is so unskilled. And I know people will probably listen to me saying, well, the team you work for has won 19 games. So they're in the NBA. And I guarantee you any NBA team is going to boat race any college team. Mm-hmm. I'm watching these college teams and I'm like, these dudes shooting, side step threes and step back threes. And it's like abominable. It's so hard to watch. I was watching Arkansas and St. John, and it was like an avalanche of bad. It was like, I mean, it gets to the point where you kind of mesmerized because both teams are like the same bad, and it's like, well, okay, well, it's even then because neither one of them's really good, and it's like, well, okay, but these are St. John's like one of the highest ranked teams in the nation. And it's like, well, wait, this is the best we got right here. I mean, so I don't know what's happened to college basketball. Yeah. I don't know if it's too many guys trying to be Steph Curry or what, but I mean it's hard for me to watch now. I will watch, but it's hard for me to watch.
Is that the game? I was going to ask you about it because your comments last week has stuck with me throughout, rounds 1 and 2 and going into it. I'm like, man, it really isn't very good basketball. But it was one game. It was, I think they were combined two teams, 4 for 34 from 3. Is that the game you're talking about? I know it was Saturday or Sunday. I cannot remember.
I mean, it might have been.
But there was one game. There was two good teams. They were combined 4 for 34, 4 for 40 from 3-point line. Only 4 3-pointers were made in the entire game. It's just jacking up threes or not. And look, I'm texting Jim yesterday. I guess it's because we don't see it, right? Maryland winning. Yeah. I don't know if that was a travel or not, and that's been a debate all last night. If Queen, traveled or not.
When I watched the replay, I didn't think anything of it. I just thought bucket.
Yeah.
But then you get people, on social media like, oh, that's a travel, and it's a travel everywhere with the NBA. And I'm thinking to myself, well, let me look at it again, and I still couldn't determine whether it was a travel. But since I cover the NBA, I'm like, that ain't no walk. That's a bucket.
But the point is, I mean, that drive-by big and kissing off the glass, that just stood out because to the point. I mean, can you imagine a game where, well, we've kind of seen it sometimes, with 4 34 combined.
I'm telling you,
It's not good basketball.
It's just hard to watch. It just is not aesthetically pleasing, and I don't care what nobody says. You can be an alumni. You can fill out your brackets. You can go to Buffalo Wild Wings and watch all the games at the same time. I don't care. It's some bad hoops. And I don't care what nobody says.
By the way, I think I'm going to try to figure out how to work in avalanche of bad. Maybe we can put that on some T-shirts.
That's it. It was Arkansas and St. John's. St. John's was 2 of 22, 9% from distance. Arkansas was 2 of 19, 10% from distance.
Yeah, that's rough.
That's it.
What in the West of one do? Apologies. I mean, that's abominable.
That's rough.
That is. I mean, think about it. See, my analogy is always this: if you took 22 shots from half court, you make more than 2 of them.
Right. Yeah.
So the 3-point line is way farther than. So if you just dribbled up and you took 22, because nobody's going to contest you at half court unless you're Steph Curry. You took 22 from half court. I bet you fool around and make 6.
Yeah. This is an awkward transition, JD, because the direction you took that when I brought that up, because I was going to ask you, how important is it for the Pelicans to add a piece in the draft?
Well, there are overseas leagues.
But,
Jim, there are overseas.
I would think that when we're talking elite players here that are going to be in the lottery, in the draft, we're not talking maybe necessarily the guys that are shooting 0 for 14 from 3 or whatever. But, I mean, just from a broad standpoint, I mean, how do you view this position that the Pelicans are in as far as being in the lottery and then being able to add somebody?
Well, one thing I can say is they've been able to find guys that they can add through the draft, whether it's Herb Jones or now Jordan Hawkins or Trey Murphy. They've been able to find guys, and those guys hadn't been top 5 picks.
Exactly, yeah.
So I kind of have faith that they'll be able to find the guy who can fit, what this team does, especially if you're able to get a guy high. Now the thing is, I don't know where. I mean, it'll be a supplemental role because you're projecting into next year, but you figure Eve Messi, Zion, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones is back, DeJounte Murray will be back, C.J. McCollum, Jordan Hawkins, Carlo Makovich. That's 8 guys, and it's going to be hard to beat out one of those 8 guys as a rookie. So whoever it is will actually fall into, I don't want to say an optimal position, but a pretty good situation that he doesn't have to be rushed. Now, knock wood, he won't have to play because of injuries. But if all things, work the way they should or the way we hope, he won't have to be force-fed, and you can kind of bring him along and, you can listen to, you can watch the people on social media, they ain't developing. That's the position you want to be in, to where you can bring a guy along slowly that he doesn't have to play. Now, best case scenario is, and I forgot Jose Alvarado in that rotation too. Best case scenario is you might be able to get a point guard. And I'm not always sold on rookie point guards, but if you can get a guy who you feel good about, because now in the NBA he doesn't exclusively have to be a point guard. You got Z who can run some point. You got C.J. McCollum who can run some point. You'll have Trey Murphy who can bring it up. You'll have Herb Jones who can bring it up. So you got guys who can get the ball past half court and not turn it over. So it could be a really, really promising situation, whether it's a point guard or whatever the Pelicans pick up. It can be a really promising situation for them.
It's an interesting point you make about, the level of, I don't know if pressure or what it is that'll be on whoever comes in here based on the other talent that's already in place. I do think it's interesting that, for example, Jordan Hawkins was a lottery pick. It was 14 out of the 14 lottery picks, but he came into a situation where it wasn't like you got to come in and dominate and carry everything. And then Eve Messi, for totally different circumstances, got to play a ton this year and way more than we expected. But he also was in a situation where, yeah, you're a first-round pick, but we're not expecting you to come in and change the franchise and that kind of thing. So I do think that's a big positive, that you would think that it sets somebody up, whoever comes in here next season, you would think it sets them up to be successful, and you're not putting them in a position where there's too much weight on them and there's too much that they have to carry.
Yeah. Now, of course, the caveat is the Pels get the number 1 ball, and this Cooper flag, all bets are off.
Right.
Now you adjust everything because it's
Sure.
like, okay, you got this guy, and now he's got to play. He has to play, and he has to contribute because if you're that high a pick, you got to. That's just the way the NBA is. I don't make the rules. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Well, let's see what takes place, obviously, as we get closer and closer to then. In the meantime, 6 games remaining at home, JD. What is it that you hope that the home folks get to see here?
Look, I hope they get to see Zion Williamson in 5 of those. And I hope this team plays really hard and competitive. That's really about as much as we can ask for right now. I want the home folks to see Zion because let's face the facts. This is a business operation and you're trying to make money and you sell tickets with your marquee guys. And if Zion Williamson is out there and he's playing well, people are going to be more inclined to say, you know what? I'm mad about this season, but I'll do another buy-in because I see some of what I want to see. So I want to see that much from this team. I just want to see Z out there, and I want to see this team be really competitive down the stretch. I want to see them, hey, win some, cool. But be competitive, be in the games, and have fans engaged at the end of games.
All right, Mr. John DeShazier, as always, appreciate the time, sir. Thank you, and try to go get a nap before tonight's game.
Hey, man, there's no rest for the non-weary.
I hear you, man. Thank you, sir.
All right, guys.
Well, thanks to John DeShazier. As always, you can give a follow as well over on NewOrleansSaints.com as he covers the football team, which, Jim, they're about to get busy here. Draft coming up also, the free agency, lots of the new signings. It's kind of interesting to kind of see the players here coming and going, bringing back some familiar faces and stuff with the Saints. I bring that up because it's one of the things you asked them about. It is going to be a huge topic here in the offseason. What is it, May 12th, I think, is when it takes place? May 12th
is the lottery, yep.
And we'll find out where the Pels will pick. And then it is a big thing because he brings up a good point, right? If you bring back the majority of this roster, which they will because they're under contract and stuff, what, I guess, spots are open or not. And I guess this depends where you draft. If you're drafting 1, 2, 3, or 4, you would assume that those players are probably guys that can come in and help you. Is it do you draft based on need? I thought it was a great question. Is it, best talent available? I think we all have our ideas to do that. I think when I look at it, just as my opinion, no one's asking me, but my opinion is there's one constant in the last, I don't know how many years, and especially since Zion's been here, and that's been an injury situation. Not just him, the team. And they've battled with injuries. Now, I don't know if it's bad luck, if it's something you can fix or whatever, but everyone has dealt with injuries across the league. It's the teams that stay healthier tend to do that. So, I don't know, I'm looking for maybe players that stay on the court or whatever, but that's why, to me, I'm like, give me best player available.
Sure.
I don't know who's going to be available or not. I mean, and again, your number one guy you traded for last year, DeJounte Murray, I don't know when he's going to be back. And I just got done cutting sound, and John DeShazier just got done watching a team 3 games on the road where turnovers were an issue. Turnovers at home were an issue when they lost big by home. So that's something that's key to me.
Yeah, for sure. And too, by the way, too, I would be interested to hear, and we're never going to get this, we're never going to get an honest answer. I'd be interested to hear the perspective of, say, some of the guys in the top 5 of the draft that are coming out that are expected to be picked high. If you're in that player's shoes, would you rather go somewhere where you're going to go to a team where they're like, okay, we need you to do everything. We need you to immediately carry the load. Some of the teams in the East, for example, that have at the bottom of the standings, they don't have a ton of pieces that they can build around. They have a couple guys that are talented. So would you rather go to a situation like that, or would you rather come to New Orleans where there's 7, 8 quality rotation pieces? And a lot of the reason that the team didn't win this year was because of injuries, where if you just go back a year, they won 49 games and made the playoffs. You compare that to some of the other teams in the East, that it's been multiple years since those teams have been in the postseason. So I think in some ways, I think there's a lot more pressure if you go to one of those other teams than if you come to New Orleans. So that's just something interesting to think about. And like I said, though, I'm pretty sure if you ask those guys, you're not going to get an honest answer. They're not going to say one way or the other, right, like, oh, I want to go somewhere where I can average 30 a game. Or, they're not going to say that. And they're also not going to say, like, yeah, I want to have less pressure on me and go somewhere where they have a lot of other talented players already. They might say that after they get picked by that team, but not beforehand.
Well, I mean, you get to see them every now and then at the cafeteria. Maybe while you're making your salad or getting a slice of pizza, you can asked upper management where are we going in the draft. I actually look. I don't know. It's interesting. You guys talked about the NCAA tournament and watching those games too. I am watching. Like you and I were at the watch party yesterday over at Uptown Sports Social, and we watched Duke and Baylor play. So obviously Flag was there. We watched Florida UConn, the ending of that one. So I am paying a little bit more attention. I'm like, well, that guy is good. Maryland's game winner. That guy Queen. That's a big taking it off the inbound, driving on the left side of the lane, kissing it high off the glass. I'm like, hey, that's not bad. So I am looking to see, man, does that translate to the NBA or not?
Yeah, I mean, what I would consider what I did the first 4 days of the NCAA tournament to be kind of grazing. Like, I'm not really.
Right,
I mean, especially while the Pelicans are playing, it's hard to really lock in on any specific game. You catch things here and there. I mean, when we get to these next rounds, though, I think I will try to watch like an entire Duke game now that they're in the Sweet 16, for example, or some of these other teams. But I mean, it's fun though to be able to just kind of click around and find the close games and the ones where there's some drama happening. Honestly, too, this is a whole different discussion. It doesn't seem like there were that many interesting games or dramatic endings either. I heard someone say, or someone tweeted that it was the worst first round in the history of the NCAA tournament, however you want to measure that. So, but hopefully these upcoming rounds, Thursday through Sunday, where we're talking Sweet 16 and then the Elite Eight, will have some better games. But I think so far it's been a little bit mediocre in terms of the drama and the tension in some of these games.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think it's going to be interesting. Maybe if we can have a fun podcast later on and talk about that too, just in terms of because JD's pretty adamant. He used to can't miss appointment television. Now it's just kind of like, and that's what I'm saying. Is it the 3-point shot? Is it one and done? Is it just that the European game's gotten better? Is it just basketball analytics has ruined the game? I don't know. I do think it'd be kind of one of those, bar conversation podcast. Just, I don't have an answer, but this is what I think.
I feel like the NCAA will not be hiring JD for their commercials when they promote the games. March Madness, it's amazing. Like, these games are awesome. You want to tune in. I feel like for some reason JD's chances at a sponsorship with them have probably gone by the wayside from this podcast.
No
unfortunately.
NIL deal for John DeShazier.
Well, it's a Monday. Thankfully, Jim is always our Friday. It's time for Mr. Eichenhofer to give his players of the week and a player to watch for this week. What you got, big guy?
Let's start with the player of the week, and I'm going to go with Zion Williamson. Granted, he only played 2 of the 4 games, but he did average 29.5 points. He shot 62% from the field. He got 24 trips to the foul line, so in just the 2 games. So, I mean, sometimes on the radio we like to complain a little bit or, maybe bring up, maybe he should get some more free throws and more foul calls. But I don't think we can legitimately say that was something that we could gripe about over those 2 games that Zion played with the 24 trips to the line. He averaged 5.5 assists, 1.5 steals, and a block. So, it was a good first 2 games that he played of that week. I don't think anyone else. I mean, CJ obviously had a 40-point game, but I don't think anyone else really consistently over those 4 games played, every single night really well. So I'm gonna go with Zion as the player of the week, and then for the player to watch, somebody that we talked a little bit about earlier, and that's gonna be Jordan Hawkins. He had 25 points at Detroit on Sunday, which tied his points season high. He was 6 for 11 on threes, which is the most 3-pointers he's made in a game all season. His career high is 7 3-pointers, which was at Denver. Only the 7th game of his NBA career, he set his record for most threes in a game and almost matched that again yesterday against Detroit. So Jordan Hawkins, player to watch over these next 7 games. The Pelicans have 3 games this week. Philadelphia tonight on Monday, Golden State on Friday, and then Charlotte on Sunday. All of these games are at home, so we're talking about a 3-game homestand before they head to California next week. And then lastly, Gus, it's time for the spoiler scale. And this is a very up and down spoiler scale because we have drastically different things at stake for some of these opponents. For tonight's game against Philly, I had to go with a 1 on a spoiler scale. The Sixers are 23-48. They're 13th in the Eastern Conference. They have the 5th worst record in the NBA, which is noteworthy because their pick is top 6 protected. So they really, if they want to keep their pick, their chances of doing so, if they finish with the 5th worst record, are a lot higher than if they finish 6th or 7th, obviously, in terms of the reverse standings. So only a 1 for the spoiler scale tonight. This is a Sixers team that is going to have a lot of players that even from their college careers, you're going to be like, I don't remember even seeing this guy play in college. There's a lot of guys that don't have a ton on their resume but are getting a big chance to play. And then Friday's game against Golden State, this might be a season high on the spoiler scale. I'm giving that one a 9. The Warriors are 41-30. They're in 6th place in the West. They're only a half game ahead of Minnesota. So, I mean, by the time we get to that game, we're talking the Warriors only have maybe 7 or 8 games left in the regular season, and it's a very tight race that they have with the T-Wolves and the Clippers and a couple other teams. And then lastly, Charlotte on Sunday on the spoiler scale, I'm giving that one a 2.
A 2?
And I would have given it a 1, except if you remember back.
0.
Well, if you remember back, the Pelicans did lose to the Hornets in a game that was very frustrating and kind of ugly. So I feel like there's a little tiny bit of payback and vengeance for that. Yeah, the Hornets are 18-53. They're in 14th place in the Eastern Conference. They have almost exactly the same record as the Pelicans do. So just to review quickly, spoiler scale, Sixers game is a 1, Warriors is a 9, and then Charlotte is a 2. So that's the spoiler scale for week 23 of the season.
Is 9 the highest you've given?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think that's the season high.
You stayed around 8?
Yeah. I want to leave a little wiggle room for a 10.
Oh, I know where it's coming.
Over the next couple weeks. We'll see. We'll monitor the situation. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. You realize there's only 3 weeks left in the season. So this is the third to last spoiler scale of the year that we're going to get.
Can you just give it a 10 just for the heck of it on April 4th?
You know what?
For the heck of it.
I think for now I'm leaning towards 10, but we'll see.
Okay.
The standings, we'll have to monitor the standings. I mean, the Lakers. Yeah. I'm sure the Lakers will still have a ton to play for at that point. So yeah. We'll probably lean towards a 10 in that game.
You never know. And look, by that time, Bronny could have passed Ben Simmons in another statistical category. You never know.
Yeah, it could be. Maybe free throw percentage.
Hey, look, he almost had 20. He had a 17-point game recently. So,
yeah, there you go.
Things are looking up. Although they also did lose that game.
Right. Yeah, they've been losing a little bit lately. So I mean, I'm really broken up over that.
Oh, I'm sure you're going to get over it at some point. We'll see you tonight. Pelicans OT Jim will join us for his 3 things as the Pels take on the 76ers tonight at the Smoothie King Center. We will see you again on Friday on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.